65. A good concept, terrible accuracy.
No. I am the father.
And here we go.
That belongs in a museum!
Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
This is Sparta!
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
Dr. Grant, my dear Dr. Sattler, welcome to Jurassic Park.
Welcome back to another episode of Easily Entertained. I'm your host, Bryson, and we talk about all things entertaining. Today, we are talking about a new movie that came out sort of recently, featuring Adam Driver, called 65. And it was interesting. It takes place 65 million years ago, so naturally, they have dinosaurs. And they're kind of awful. But before I talk about how awful the dinosaur designs are, let me talk about the basic premise of the movie. So, Adam Driver, he plays this pilot of a spaceship called, his name is Mills. He's from another planet and he's transporting people to another planet. And along the way, he hits an unidentified asteroid field and he gets hit and he gets knocked off course and he crashes on Earth. And this is all taking place 65 million years ago. And so he lands, the ship he was in kind of like split off. So his escape pod is off like miles away and he has to go and find that. And so essentially that is the basic premise. He has to go find this escape pod to get off Earth so that he can be rescued. And he finds this one surviving passenger. It's a little girl. What was her name? I don't remember her name. That's okay. But so he found this girl and he wants to escape and bring her home safe. And so they have to go through this dinosaur infested world to try and make it home. And so that's like the basic plot. Seems fairly simple, and it is fairly simple. It's kind of the typical high-tech versus prehistoric or like nature kind of stuff. It's like what we see typically in a lot of media with dinosaurs in like the modern world. Like Jurassic Park, it's usually like tech versus nature, that kind of stuff. And so it's not bad. I think it's a fun action movie. You kind of know what you're getting into. You're like, oh yeah, this is going to be kind of dumb. And it is. It's kind of just mindless action. And that's kind of what you really want. And so, yeah, it's pretty basic story-wise and movie-wise. My thing that I mainly want to talk about is the accuracy of the dinosaurs. Or the lack thereof. Because these dinosaur designs are abysmal. They are so awful. There are two designs. I'm trying to think how many dinosaurs are actually in it. I think there's only really like 4 different dinosaurs in like the whole movie. 2 of them, I don't entirely hate their designs. There's an Oviraptor design. They're in like a cave, so it's kind of hard to actually see the design. But that one, I didn't really mind. It kind of stayed a bit more accurate. I couldn't remember if it had feathers or not. And it's actually kind of hard to find footage or images of any of these things online. They've actually done a fairly decent job at keeping it all like in the movie and not spread out over the internet. And then the other design that I didn't really hate was their raptor design. They never specify what all of these dinosaurs are. We kind of just have to assume on some of these. One of them, you have no idea. Well, 2. And so you have their little raptor. They're small. They're actually small in stature. They have quills. I do think their wrists are pronated, though. So if you didn't know, dinosaurs, particularly like the theropods, so the meat eaters, in like Jurassic Park, so the raptors have wrists turned facing down. So they go like this. If you're watching on video, you can see what I'm doing. So their wrists bend like that. In real life, their wrists, like, that'd be broken. They couldn't actually do that. They were usually inward facing, and they would stay to the side. They wouldn't be able to turn them like that. And so that's like a common issue that usually comes up with raptors, because typically in movies, they want them to be even more intelligent and be able to do like acrobatic type things. So they want them to grab stuff, and that doesn't usually work like that in the real world. So that is like that. But the raptor is small in stature. And not all raptors were small, but that one particularly was, and it had quills. It wasn't like full feathers. It was still pretty like lizardy. But I liked that they gave a little bit of a nod to it, but they didn't actually do it. Then we have the T-Rex, which was not the greatest. They very much... they reminded me of a combination of the Indominus Rex, which is the hybrid in Jurassic World. It's the big white one. And the V-Rexes in Peter Jackson's King Kong, the one with Jack Black. Because they were trying to describe trying to think how I would describe them. So like their teeth were very snarly. They stuck out. They had like snaggle teeth. In real life, it's kind of debated on this, but more than likely they would be under. They would, like, if their mouth was closed, you wouldn't be able to see their teeth. They would have like lips, and so that was kind of weird. I didn't care particularly for that. They also have this weird like quadrupedal T-Rex in a way. It wasn't like exactly a T-Rex, but I remember seeing it in the theater and I was like, that's sick. That did not exist, but that's cool. I guess do what you want to do, because that 100% was not a real dinosaur, but okay. And then one that this one drove me really nuts, because this one for sure was weird. They had one, it was probably about the typical raptor size you're used to seeing in Jurassic Park. So more like Deinonychus Utahraptor size, which are way closer in size to a person. And which is why in like Jurassic Park, instead of saying like, because velociraptors were all like tiny, they were size of like turkeys. They were very small. But because they wanted to amp up the scariness value, they had originally modeled them off Deinonychus, which is a North American raptor species, and they're much bigger. They're way closer to humans in size. During the production of Jurassic Park, Utahraptor was also found, which is like even bigger than people. I think like just a bit. They're definitely heavier, but they're a bit taller than most people, I think. But yeah, so Jurassic Park had modeled them off Deinonychus because that was a bit scarier. They wanted a bigger raptor. So if you think of like the size of those raptors in the Jurassic Park movies is about the size of this random creature. I couldn't figure out what it was supposed to be, because one, it's quadrupedal and a carnivore. And we are in the time of this movie, like where it's taking place is several days before the meteor crashes and wipes out all the dinosaurs. And with that, they're in the late Cretaceous, so a lot of dinosaurs evolved like to stand fully upright. And that's how you knew they were dinosaurs, is because their legs were under them, not splayed out, because that would make them just like normal reptiles, just lizards. These had splayed out arms and legs. They were not directly underneath them like dinosaurs would have had. So they were very, very lizard-like. And they were large. trying to guess what they could have been. I'm trying to remember. I think it's a heterodont. That is probably, or a Herrerasaurus. That may have been what I was actually thinking. Which was like a quadrupedal carnivore. They, I think, were either in the Jurassic or the Triassic, so millions and millions of years before. I don't think there was anything like that in the Cretaceous. Though, here is the thing about what we know about dinosaurs. Is technically we don't know everything. These species could have possibly existed. It's not entirely likely, because dinosaurs were the dominant species and they grew the largest. They were the most successful. That's why they became so large. And with that, if you're having a species that is not the dominant one, like in their area, they usually tend to be smaller because it's easier to get away from other large predators and danger. And so, like, lizards during the time of the dinosaurs were not as large because the dinosaurs were the ones that occupied that large organism space. And so with that, I was like, that seems like it's a little old. But anyways, so what was I saying? I'm trying to remember. Oh, so yeah, some of the, it's like they're technically, they could be possible because we don't know everything about dinosaurs, because fossilization is actually extremely rare, because you need all the right conditions to make things fossilize. And so typically what we know as dinosaurs were most likely the most successful of the dinosaurs. We are probably missing a crap ton of species because, especially ones that were more bird-like, because bird bones are hollow, they don't fossilize as easy. They're more fragile. And so without like the perfect conditions, they wouldn't fossilize. That's why I think it took us so long to figure out that most of the theropods were like basically birds, because that aspect of things was not preserved very well. And so it was kind of hard to realize that. And so, granted, some of these like fictional dinosaurs that they added in 65 could technically have existed. Like, it's not entirely out of the realm. It's not very likely because it would have been very few and far between. Because we would have fossils that say they were more successful, rather than just maybe like 100 in their population. So like the super niche stuff probably didn't like fossilize, and so we wouldn't really know. At least I think. If anyone's a paleontologist listening to this, please tell me otherwise. I am only going based off what I know. But it wasn't like terrible. Like, I feel like some other designs were sort of based on current knowledge, but not entirely. I remember seeing an interview that they wanted these dinosaurs to be very different from Jurassic Park, which is fine because Jurassic Parks are not the most accurate either. When Jurassic Park was originally released, they were fairly accurate for the time, and now they're a bit more outdated. But just because you don't want it to be Jurassic Park dinosaurs does not mean that you have to make them completely inaccurate. You can have fairly accurate original dinosaur designs that still like are faithful to what they were. I think in this movie it was very much a wanting to have a scary type dinosaur, because there are several times throughout the film where there's a lot of horror aspects that go through it. And so it was definitely something I think they put into consideration with their dinosaurs. They wanted to make them scary, but you don't have to have inaccurate dinosaurs to make them scary. We don't know exactly what most dinosaurs look like. So even like keeping it sort of accurate, we're always going to think they're sort of alien because we can't experience them firsthand. And so I don't know. It's something that I understand why they did it, because that makes sense. They wanted to make it a scary movie. They wanted to sell tickets and get people to come because it was like a thriller type stuff. But I think doing that at the cost of like making the dinosaurs accurate made them not dinosaurs. It just made them movie monsters. You can have dinosaurs that like still act like animals. I wouldn't always praise this for Jurassic Park, but I do think it later in like the Jurassic World movies and even some of the sequels of Jurassic Park, they seemed to make them more like animals. It was not just a mindless killing machine type style that a lot of dinosaur depictions get. They were animals and they would act like animals. They didn't necessarily always care about the other animals in the area. They may just want to like be chill and wander. And I think Jurassic Park got a bit better at that in the later series, but you could still have moments where animals get annoyed, because that is how animals would behave in real life, that you could still make them kind of scary because they're annoyed and they want to get out their frustrations, because that does happen in real life. It's not an inherently human thing for things to take on their own emotions and like let that drive them, because a lot of animals do have emotions. I think it's mainly recognized in mammals. I think more so now because mammal brains are just different. And I think they're more evolved more of the time. But like people say that lizards and other reptiles and stuff, they don't feel emotion the same way. I think they do feel emotion, that it's just in a different format because their brains work differently. I couldn't really tell you because I'm not like the all-knowing person on biology. I don't know everything, but I feel like most living things do have emotion and they can act on that emotion. They can get frustrated and things like that. So I like when dinosaurs are actual animals and they have moments where they lash out, because that can be scary, because it's how animals can behave. Nature is unpredictable. It's like SeaWorld having their orcas and like the Blackfish documentary. Sometimes they can train the orcas. Sometimes they lash out because they're frustrated and they're in captivity, and that's usually the case for like dinosaur stuff. They usually depict them as like in cages and stuff, and they're breaking free. And so it's that kind of aspect I do like when that is put into place. I don't like when that's all they're doing, because I don't think that's realistic, and it just becomes a monster at that point. Basically, like watching 65, it's almost like watching the movie Alien. I'm like, this is a creature that is not acting out of like survival. It's not hunting. It's not trying to defend itself. They were actively going out of their way to attack these people, which is exactly like what the xenomorph does in Alien. It just goes to kill people. It is not like a survival thing. I think when it's given the context of survival, like whether they're hunting or defending themselves, that makes sense, and I find that believable, and that makes for a better story. I don't think having just mindless monsters when they're supposed to be animals is a good plot device. I think it's kind of a cop-out from the creators, and I'm going to be honest, I did enjoy the movie. I'm just think that they could have done them more accurate to make it more believable, and in some cases that may have made it scarier if you felt like they were normal animals and then they were lashing out for maybe unknown reasons. Then that makes it scarier because you have this element of the unknown and these creatures that are lashing out because of different circumstances. I think that would have made for a better movie, and I would have liked that a little bit better. I think that could have been improved. But that is just me. You may have to watch the movie for yourself. I personally enjoyed it. I was easily entertained, of course. And yeah, so that was 65 with Adam Driver. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of Easily Entertained. If you did, be sure to tune back in, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Easily Entertained with me, your host, Bryson. If you enjoyed, be sure to tune back in Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for all the latest episodes. And for more updates, you can check us out on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for all the latest on entertainment. And until next time, this is Easily Entertained.